Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of Forgotten Favorites, where I take a look at some stuff that either I picked up from the vaults, things that I've got in my collection that maybe have been kind of buried for decade after decade, right? Usually it's going to be like rarity stuff in the realms of prog rock, hard rock, jazz fusion, heavy metal, all that sort of thing, all those topics we cover so often here. Could be some old favorites of mine, albums that maybe never quite hit the mainstream that I've always dug, or in this case, a lot of new stuff that I picked up, some bunch of real rarities, as well as some other things that I just never had before that I picked up, old and new, all sorts of great stuff. So anyway, why don't we just kickstart this whole thing here, right? I'm going to start with a couple releases. These are actually reissues of some classic Norwegian prog from the early 70s, and the reason why I'm double dipping on this because I talked about both of these releases on one of our What's Happening shows, our new product shows, but seeing as like the majority of you don't watch the new product shows, you probably missed these reissues, right? I'm telling you, always watch the new product shows, because not only do I do brand new releases from newer bands, I do new releases from classic bands, I do reissues and remasters, all that fun stuff. So you might be missing on some really cool stuff if you don't watch the What's Hot shows, the review shows, I'm telling you. So anyway, in case you missed it, all right, here we have from, what do we got here? The guys from Norway, 1973, 1974, Ruphus, Newborn Day, okay, and Ranshart. Two really cool two really cool releases from a very cool band that kind of went through some lineup changes during the 70s. A really good progressive rock band. This is their first album right here. This is a little heavier, a little more of a rockin' album. Great Hammond organ, guitar. You got amazing male and female vocals. A lot of the different instrumentation too. Then they changed singers. They got rid of both the other singers. They just got a new male singer. Went more with the Moog synthesizer, the kind of a Yes sound on their sophomore album, Ranshart. This one's a little more kind of melodic, and like I said, has more like flavors of Yes and maybe Camel, whereas this, a little heavier, maybe some early ELP, some Deep Purple, Uriah Heep, that sort of thing. Both really good, both really different, obviously different lineups for the most part. A couple guys the same on both, but a really good band. I highly recommend you check out these new reissues from Ruphus from Norway. All right, next let's switch over to the U.S., specifically New York. I found out about this band, and again, this band under a different name I think we've all heard about, right? But I was talking to a friend of mine at the gym a couple weeks ago. He's a little bit older than me, and he was telling me about some of the great shows I used to go see at the Fillmore East in New York City back in the late 60s, early 70s. So one day he came in, and he's always talking about how, wow, you know so many bands and all this kind of stuff. So he was like, I got a band that I saw once that after I saw them, I don't even remember who they opened up for. I never heard of them again. I'd be interested to see if you know who they are. So he named the band. They're called Elephant's Memory. And I'm like, shit, I never heard of Elephant's Memory before. So I'm going to go do some research on them. So I went and did some research. Turns out they were a fairly popular band for just a couple of years. All right, played around the live circuit a bit. They had a hit single called Mongoose. I went and listened to that, and I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And then I found out that the guys in the band were actually basically John and Yoko Ono's backing band. These guys were the Plastic Ono band. I was like, holy crap, that explains it. So anyway, long story short, I went out and picked up Elephant's Memory, the self-titled Elephant's Memory. Pretty cool album. I kind of dig this band. They're very different. It's very 60s sounding. This is from 1969. They're actually from New York. To me, it kind of sounds like Steppenwolf and a little bit of Jefferson Airplane, but there's like a kind of jazzy element going on through their music. It's kind of rocking in spots, very psychedelic, kind of jazzy. Like I said, they got some pop going on, a little bit of R&B. They kind of do a little bit of everything. Pretty cool band. I kind of dig that. I'm glad my friend Charlie brought them up to me. All right, so let's move to Virginia, 1972. Band called Short Cross, Arising. I dig this kind of stuff. You're going to see a theme here, guys. A lot of these bands that I'm going to show you are kind of in that like early 70s heavy Hammond organ guitar type of thing, right? Because I love that so much, being such a big Purple Heap fan. A lot of some of these bands also, you can hear some Vanilla Fudge, okay, Iron Butterfly. A little bits of Sabbath, Purple, Zeppelin, Humble Pie, Grand Funk, all that sort of stuff. That's kind of what you get here. Very, very cool album. It's like 13 tracks on here. You got the regular album as it was released and a bunch of different mixes and alternate takes and stuff like that. Very, very cool stuff. All right. This next album, or on CD actually, is from a band who one of the members is extremely famous for not doing stuff like this. This has been kind of claimed to be one of the worst albums ever released, but I dig it. Okay, I'm talking about the self-titled only release from Attila, featuring none other than heavy metal Billy Joel, right? And drummer Jonathan Small. A lot of stories behind this. Okay, so this is a little band that these two guys who were friends, they were in another band prior to this. They put together this band trying to kind of emulate the heavy rockers of the time. So we're talking, what year was this? This was 1970. Okay, so it's pretty damn cool though when if you got like fuzzed out Hammond organ and drums. That's it. No guitar, no bass. You know, Billy's doing some of the kind of the bass notes on the organ. There's no guitar, but he's doing all these wild freak out solos on the Hammond, you know, with wah-wah and fuzz. And, you know, there's vocals here. You know, it doesn't really sound like the Billy Joel we all have come to know and love, but Billy trying to do like, you know, like a Zeppelin-y Purple type of thing. It's pretty wild. Some of the tunes they're a little up. They border on the silly side, but I like the fact that they just went for it on this, and it's pretty heavy actually, considering that it's, you know, just like kind of Hammond with the fuzz. You've even got some, and I think I brought this up once before, one of our question and answers show. There's even some wild blast beats on this album from Mr. Small on drums. The first ever blast beats. I don't know. You heard some blast beats and some jazz releases throughout the 60s. I think Tony Williams was one of the first guys to actually do blast beats, but in a rock context, pretty interesting. I kind of dig this for what it is. If you're a Billy Joel fan, this is a kind of a cool curiosity. And there are the guys right there, and if you've kind of read any of the history of Billy Joel, you probably read that at some point while they had this band going, Billy wound up having an affair with his wife. She left him, divorced him, and married Billy Joel. Of course, that marriage didn't last throughout the 70s, and he wound up, you know, getting remarried again. I believe Christy Brinkley might have been his next wife. But anyway, kind of a cool album, I think, for what it is, right? Next up, all right, we're going to stay in the U.S. We're going to go to Idaho, 1969, 1970. The band is called Sleepy John, self-titled Sleepy John. All right. Psychedelic hard rock, okay, more hard rocking guitars, crunchy organ, Deep Purple, Iron Butterfly, that sort of thing, maybe little bits of Zeppelin here and there, but pretty good stuff. There you can see they played with Frank Zappa and the Mothers. Good vocals, I dig it. A lot of cool stuff, man, from that time period that people have never heard before. All right, let's go to Germany. Very cool, like kind of heavy prog with little bits of jazz too. Missing Link, Nevergreen from 1972, again from Germany. Guitars and keys and sax. It's kind of jazzy in spots, kind of heavy in others. Really cool German prog from the early 70s. I dig it. I dig it. All right, what else? All right, now we're going back to New York City, 1971. Stark Naked. Self-titled. All right, what kind of notes I take here? Heavy prog. Little bits of jazz, little bits of psych. Long tunes, a lot of jamming on this. If you like, you know, long guitar solos and Hammond solos, who doesn't? You'll dig that. Very cool. All right, next one. This one was reissued from our friends over at Angel Air Records. Ancient Greece, Women and Children First, with bonus tracks. Okay. These guys were from Wales. Pretty good bluesy hard rock. Some of the tunes, you know, some of this I really liked a lot because it's kind of heavy. Some cool jamming, some kind of, you know, ripping fuzzy guitar solos. A couple of tunes kind of sound like very generic kind of pub rock type of thing, but there is some definitely good material on here. I'd say about half of it I really like. The other half I'm kind of like, but the stuff that's good is really good. All right, next up, Salem, Mass, Witch Burning, 1971, more U.S. stuff. This, if you love freaking heavy Moog and Hammond, heavy Prog, this has kind of like a spooky feel to it, obviously. It's called the spell Salem, Mass, better be a little fucking spooky, right? While it's not quite as heavy as like Sabbath, think of kind of like the ominous nature of like that first Black Widow album and some of the kind of moodiness of those early Sabbath albums. But this is heavy on the keyboards. Okay, but there is cool guitar in here as well. Atomic Rooster might be sort of a comparison. I dig this one a lot. Very cool. All right, next, Kopperfield-Tales Untold. All right, from Michigan. This is 1974. Kind of interesting cover art. Looks like high school student did it, right? Pretty cool, you know, if you're into fantasy and comic books and stuff, that's kind of what they're going for here. More guitar and organ jamming. Pretty heavy in spots. Get like a little bit of Humble Pie, Grand Funk Railroad grooves going on here, but more importantly, if you like classic Deep Purple, I think you'll dig this. A lot of tunes on here. Okay, that's a nice little reissue. All right, these next two I dig a lot. All right, from Germany. 1972 and 1974, the first two releases from the band Gift. There you got their self-titled, which is pretty heavy. Good early 70s German hard rock. I dig this a lot. And then the next one is called Blue Apple. All right, from 74. This one is a little bit more proggy. Okay, you still get some of the heaviness, but I guess the band decided to kind of embrace what was going on in the UK with Genesis and Yes and so on and so forth. So definitely more proggy, but in this one, you know, it's got some prog in it, but this is definitely the harder rocking album of the two. Definitely like these a lot. Check out the back of them. If you can track these down, this is pretty hard to find now. This one you can get pretty easily, but both really cool. All right, so from Chicago, Winterhawk-There and Back Again, live at the the Aragon Ballroom. All right. Really good early hard rock and metal from Chicago. These recordings were from, 78 and 79. Blistering guitar work, folks. Blistering. We actually talked about their lone studio album back a few months ago on a previous Forgotten Favorites show. If you really like that, I highly recommend getting this. This is as good, if not better. And a lot of different tunes, all right? So you're not going to get just a rehash of the studio album. I think there's only like maybe 2 or 3 at tops tunes that were on that album, if that. And then the rest is all other tunes, right? Great stuff. Killer guitar work. Killer. All right, back to Germany. They also had some Czechoslovakian members as well. Emergency. Self-titled. And Entrance. If you dig, you know, rock and prog and jazz with a brass, okay, so think like early Chicago, early Blood, Sweat, and Tears, you're going to like these guys. Some pretty wild guitar work, okay? You got the horns and shit and sax, and I dig it. What do we got? Tenor sax, baritone sax, flute, bass, drums, organ, piano, guitar, vocals, all sorts of cool stuff. Dig it. Dig it. Like I said, if you like early Chicago and Blood, Sweat, and Tears. And then we've got, and I've been trying to track this one down for a million years, Max Webster, the great Canadian band, Live Magnetic Air from 1979. Long out of print on CD. Fantastic live album. Recorded, you know, towards the end of their history. They didn't last too far into the 80s. Got some great tunes on here. America's Veins, Paradise Skies, and Context of the Moon. Night Flights, Lip Service. Sarnia Town Reggae, Here Among the Cats, Gravity, Waterline, Charmonium, and Hangover. Kim Mitchell and Company. Doesn't get much better than that. So there you have a lot of cool stuff from the vault. But wait, we're not done. We're not done. I got more. I told you this is going to be a jam-packed show. What else we got here? So I decided, you know how I often talk about, you know, greatest hit sets, and one of the worst things I can ever do as a music lover is go out and buy a greatest hit set. And because what generally winds up happening is, yeah, it's a great kind of intro to the band, right? But I usually, if I really like it, I'm like, I'm sure they have other tunes I would like just as much as these, so why don't I just go and get the whole discography, or at least a good chunk of it, right? So the band Y&T, earlier called Yesterday and Today, was one of those bands. I've actually, back in the day, I had a couple of their LPs and a couple cassettes and whatnot, but then, I don't know, like, I never replaced them on CD, and then like maybe 10 years ago, I decided, hey, let me just go get a Y&T compilation, and I did. And I was like, and I always, all the songs on there are really good, but I'm like, God, I know they have other good stuff. So a couple of months ago, I decided, you know what, I need to go and replace a lot of those Y&T albums, but I went and got some ones that I never had before as well. So first off, the self-titled album, Yesterday and Today, before they shortened their name. Never had this before. As well as Yesterday and Today, Struck Down. Okay, their second album. These are both really good. Less of the kind of like metal style that the band would kind of, move into in the early 80s and throughout. This is more of great 70s hard rock, okay? Mr. Menichetti throwing down some great riffs and solos. Really good albums right here. Really good. And then, how about Earthshaker, as we kind of break into the 80s? Very solid album, all right? A lot of people's favorites. Black Tiger, pretty heavy album. This I was really into this album back in the day, and even more so the Mean Streak album. She's Got a Mean Streak. A lot of great tunes on this one. This one got a lot of airplay on my record player back in the day when I was a teenager. And then some ones that I had, a couple of these on cassette. One, I never had this one, Down for the Count. Never bought this one back in the day. This is pretty solid. Again, we're looking at, like mid-80s here. So, got to be open to that 80s, melodic commercial metal type of thing. Hard rock, whatever you want to call it. And then we've got In Rock We Trust. Okay, had this one cassette back in the day. Some good tunes on here. Solid. And then we got Contagious. All right. Band getting pretty commercial by this point, but still really solid material for that time period. You like that kind of 80s hard rock and metal type of thing. So there's that. Got my dose of Y&T. What else we got? All right, so I went and, of course, the new CD is out. We talked about that recently, but I went and picked up the only other one I didn't have from the Aristocrats-Culture Clash. Of course, Guthrie, Govan, Mark Miniman, Brian Beller on bass, supergroup, power trio, instrumental power trio. Incredible. Rock, jazz, hard rock, prog, blues, wackiness. These guys do it all. Amazing stuff. And then because I've been on such a Guthrie Govan kick, I got his solo album, Erotic Cakes. This is mind-blowing stuff, people. Gotta love it. What else? I know there's more. This stuff just in, all right? Because, I got a lot of friends, and every now and then they're, they're like, oh, you ever check out this band? Usually they're coming to me looking for stuff. But every now and then, some of my other buddies, I'll see them posting something on Facebook, a video, and I'll go check it out. I'm like, oh, that's pretty damn good. I never listened to them before. This particular band I had actually heard of. I've heard of quite a bit in the last 6 months or so, but I never really checked them out much. The Marcus King Band. All right, so I picked up a couple of their albums here. We got Soul Insight. This is great stuff, man. Kind of reminds me of vintage Allman Brothers, a little bit of Santana. All right, this young guy, Marcus King, is a phenomenal guitar player. He's got all the blues and jazz and rock licks down pat. He's got a great band. They're kind of jammy. They got horns and rhythm section, keyboards, the whole 9 yards. Great stuff. A lot of groove, catchy tunes. Then we got the Marcus King Band, self-titled. All right, that's them right there. And then this is the new one. What is this called? Carolina Confessions. I'm pretty sure this is the latest one from last year. Okay, I have not listened to this one yet, although I have heard a couple tracks from it. This one's probably, out of the three, based on what I've heard, is more of a full band thing, less of here I'm a hotshot guitar player type of thing. Some really great, memorable tunes from the ones I've heard. All right, so I may offer more insight into that at a later date, because I haven't heard the whole thing through and through. I listened to a couple of tracks before I bought it. But I'm really liking what I'm hearing here. Great band. From what I understand, they're phenomenal live. I think they went out on the road with Government Mule. I know they're playing the festival circuit right now. So really, really good stuff. If you dig kind of like, jam band stuff with a bit of blues, some jazz, horns and all that kind of stuff. A lot of pop melodies, blazing guitar work. Pretty cool stuff. I think that's it, guys. So you got 20 minutes of forgotten favorites. Some new, some old, right? Some really obscure stuff. So if you haven't checked any of this stuff, I highly recommend you do. I'm going to drop, especially like the really rare stuff from the 70s, I'm going to drop those in the description. So when I post this, you'll see a list of all the albums, name of the band, titles, all that kind of good stuff. I'll probably just do it all anyway. But anyway, hope you enjoyed that. This is on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter. Of course, we're on YouTube all the damn time. So we'll see you guys tomorrow. All right. Have a good one. Take care.